Have you ever stopped to think if you're actually living the life you want, or if you're just following the rules and expectations others have set for you? From an early age, we're taught to obey our parents, school, society. But is this automatic obedience actually pulling us further from who we truly are? Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most provocative philosophers in history, believed that true freedom comes from questioning these norms and creating our own values. He challenges us to step out of our comfort zones, push our limits, and take full responsibility for our existence. But how do you do that without falling into chaos or selfishness? How do you balance freedom with responsibility? And how do you create an authentic life, breaking free from the chains of obedience without ignoring the values we consider important? Friedrich Nietzsche, born in 1844 in Germany, is one of the most influential philosophers of the 19th century, known for challenging society's traditional values and proposing a new way of looking at life. Author of works like Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil, he questioned the norms that guided humanity, believing that they limited human potential. For Nietzsche, true fulfillment came from creating new values and living in a freer, more authentic way, breaking free from imposed constraints. From a young age, Nietzsche was influenced by a conservative environment, but always showed a critical stance toward accepted truths. Throughout his life, he faced personal and health crises, which led him to directly confront inherited values and seek alternatives that reflected humanity's ability to reinvent itself. The will to power is one of the most important concepts in Nietzsche's philosophy, referring to the fundamental force that drives all life. It should not be understood as the desire to dominate others or exert external control, but rather as an internal movement of growth, overcoming, and self-discovery. For Nietzsche, the will to power is the purest expression of life. It is what propels us to reach our maximum potential, to overcome limitations imposed by ourselves or society, and to create something unique and meaningful. The impulse of the will to power is the vital energy that pushes us forward, often unconsciously. Think of it as the motivation that arises when you feel you can do more, be more, or change something in your life that doesn't feel authentic. It's a deep desire for transformation and creation rooted in the very essence of human existence. This impulse makes us reject passivity and seek the fulfillment of what we truly are. Self-discovery in this context occurs when a person begins to listen to and recognize this inner force. It's a process of looking inward, questioning the values we've adopted without reflection, and realizing what we truly want for ourselves. Nietzsche believed that each person has this inner power, an unexplored potential that can be discovered and developed. Recognizing it takes courage, as it means abandoning the certainties imposed by the external world and facing the challenge of creating new values for oneself. For someone who has always been overly obedient, liberation begins by asking, why do I follow these rules? Are they truly mine, or just reflections of others' expectations? The next step is to open up to the possibility of living more authentically, even if it involves discomfort or initial opposition. This person needs to embrace the will to power as a tool to rediscover themselves and break free from the conformity that has kept them trapped. The concept of the Übermensch, Superman, helps to understand what it means to be authentic and live according to one's own convictions. For Nietzsche, the Übermensch is someone who frees themselves from societal norms and creates their own values. These societal norms are rules or standards of behavior accepted by the majority of people in a culture. They determine what is considered right or wrong, but are often not questioned. Values, on the other hand, are the principles that guide our actions and choices. They can be inherited from society, religion, or family, but Nietzsche believed that, in order to be truly free, we need to create our own values. The traditional morality, criticized by Nietzsche, is the set of inherited values and rules, especially from religion and social conventions. This morality often promotes obedience, conformity, and submission, limiting the individual's ability to become who they truly are. Nietzsche saw this as an obstacle to true freedom. Nietzsche's solution for those who feel trapped by excessive obedience to society or family is the process of auto-creativity, a central concept in his philosophy. Auto-creativity is the ability to build your own identity and life through conscious choices, rejecting inherited or imposed values and creating new, authentic, and meaningful values for the individual. It is an active and courageous process of becoming who you truly are, rather than simply being what society expects you to be. But how do you know what really matters? For Nietzsche, this requires introspection and honesty with yourself. It means asking yourself, what are the values and rules I've been taught that don't reflect what I truly feel or believe? This type of reflection helps identify what is genuine in you and what has simply been absorbed from the environment around you. Discovering what is important is a gradual process of listening to your own passions, interests, and desires, while temporarily ignoring the external voices that dictate what you should do. Self-overcoming is another key concept. For Nietzsche, it's the constant effort to surpass your own limits, fears, and inertia. It's not about competing with others, but with yourself, overcoming habits and beliefs that prevent you from growing. Self-overcoming happens when you decide not to settle for the comfort of obedience and actively challenge yourself, living a life more aligned with who you truly are. Creating new values, in this context, means establishing your own principles for living. Instead of blindly accepting societal norms or traditional morality, you define what you consider right and wrong based on your own experience and intuition. It doesn't mean completely disregarding morality, but questioning what makes sense for you. It is an act of creative responsibility. The Übermensch, or Superman, symbolizes the person who takes full responsibility for their life. They do not rely on the expectations of others or the rules imposed upon them. Imposed rules are norms and values we inherit without choice, like the ideas that we must always please, obey, or sacrifice ourselves to meet the expectations of parents, friends, or society in general. Following your own convictions means rejecting these impositions and living according to what you believe is essential. For someone who has always obeyed too much, the first step toward liberation is to begin questioning these rules and norms. Which ones make sense to you? Which are followed only out of habit or fear of judgment from others? From there, the person can experiment with small changes such as saying no to something they don't want to do, or exploring activities and choices that truly bring pleasure and meaning. Authenticity begins with these small acts of personal affirmation. However, it's important to remember that living according to your convictions does not mean ignoring the most important values or harming others. The balance between rejecting imposed norms and respecting what is essential for coexistence is something Nietzsche implicitly and indirectly recognizes. He proposes that we be creative, but also responsible. For example, you can reject a rule that you find unjust without disrespecting the value of justice, because justice, when redefined, can be lived in a more personal and authentic way. The balance between challenging norms and respecting universal values lies in the responsibility to carefully choose what you want to preserve and what you wish to transform. A rule that once seemed unquestionable can be replaced by a new value that you've created, but that still maintains a basic respect for the freedom and dignity of others. Living as the Übermensch requires courage, because authenticity will not always be comfortable. You will need to deal with criticism and possibly feel out of place for not following others' expectations. However, the result is a much richer life, where every decision reflects who you truly are. You must step out of the shadow of obedience and create a path that is uniquely yours, with responsibility, but also with passion and freedom. Nietzsche's philosophy challenges us to reflect on morality and freedom, but it also confronts us with the dilemma of moral relativism. This concept suggests that there are no universal standards for defining right and wrong, and that each individual or culture can create their own moral rules. While Nietzsche doesn't explicitly advocate for relativism, his idea that we should create our own values might lead to this interpretation. However, for him, this freedom isn't an invitation to arbitrariness, but rather an opportunity to build a deeper morality, grounded in authenticity and self-overcoming. This requires responsibility, as creating new values means fully embracing the consequences of our choices and how they impact the world. Responsibility in this context is the recognition that the freedom to create values shouldn't be used as an excuse for selfishness or impulsive decisions. One must reflect on the kind of life they want to build and how their choices contribute to their own growth and relationships with others. For Nietzsche, the creation of values isn't about abandoning morality, but rather transforming it into something more personal and meaningful, always driven by the desire to live authentically and the commitment to staying true to oneself. When we compare Nietzsche to other philosophical schools, such as utilitarianism and existentialism, we see just how unique his perspective is. Utilitarianism, represented by thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, argues that morality should aim for the greatest good, for the greatest number of people. Essentially, what is moral is what maximizes collective happiness. Nietzsche rejects this approach because he sees it as a form of conformity that sacrifices individuality in favor of a limited view of well-being. For him, life shouldn't be reduced to the pursuit of pleasure or comfort, but rather to facing challenges that lead to growth and self-overcoming. Existentialism, on the other hand, shares with Nietzsche an emphasis on individual freedom, but with a stronger focus on anguish and the search for meaning in a world without universal values. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus stress the responsibility of creating meaning in an indifferent universe. Nietzsche, however, goes further by asserting that life doesn't need justification. He proposes that we embrace existence as it is, celebrating its vitality and creative potential, instead of lamenting its lack of objective meaning. For Nietzsche, personal happiness should not be the ultimate goal. Happiness, understood as a state of pleasure or comfort, is secondary to the process of growth and self-overcoming. He believes that true fulfillment comes from the ability to face adversity and transform those experiences into something new and powerful. Growth, in this sense, is more important because it reflects the essence of life as a constant flow of overcoming and creation. Happiness is merely a byproduct of this process, not its purpose. The main lesson of Nietzsche's philosophy is that, in order to be truly free, we must liberate ourselves from imposed norms and create our own paths. Excessive obedience to others can limit our potential, and to live an authentic life, we must question what we are told and seek our own truth. Nietzsche challenges us to embrace our will to power and to become the Übermensch, the one who creates and lives their own values, unafraid of going against the grain. Thank you for watching.